Have you ever
Oh,
achieved your
wow.
dreams and then realized you could rise?
Yo, I dig the costume. That's awesome. Um, funny little anecdote. When I first created this channel, I didn't originally plan to be like a history reactor. Like I said, I only react to history on this channel. Historical movies and, historical videos from like creators such as Epic History or Extra History or, Simple History or Chat History, And, I thought like, I kind of ended up falling into this realm because originally I was gonna watch a lot of other things, like a bunch of other YouTuber funny series, like original stuff. But I've kind of only built my following so far on history, so I'm like I can't leave it, so I'm just gonna stick with it for the rest of this channel's life. And I had a plan. I was like, oh, like what if like every time I cover a new historical place or time, I put on a costume about that time. Like for instance, when I was watching the Napoleon series, I'm like, I should buy like a Napoleon outfit, and like it would be really fun. Um, or when I was watching like the Julius Caesar series, I did actually dress up in my Roman toga and stuff. But then I kind of realized that the amount of money I would have to spend on various costumes would have been expensive because I cover a lot of places, and also it probably would have been very inappropriate at times. Like if I'm covering Chinese history, I'm gonna, dress up like a Chinese emperor. I'd imagine that'd be a very, yeah, I could see where offense could come. So I scrapped the idea, but it was an original idea I had. I'm sorry, back to the video. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was kind of funny.
Even higher? Last time, our protagonist Wu Zetian had gone from concubine to nun to the Empress of China. Any normal woman would be satisfied, but Wu Zetian is the farthest from a normal woman that you can get in all of Chinese history. She is not done. By the way, a detail I forgot to mention in my last video, Li Ji, the chancellor, who was like, "Your Majesty, this is your personal family matter. Don't ask me." He was the one who presented her Empress seal to her. Symbolism. And some other clarifications. The pictures I'm using for all the historical figures are from various Chinese dramas about this period of history, which I did say in the description, but you know what? Also, Empress Dowager...
Yeah, don't worry. I always have to do that too. Okay, that was great because I had a question about like where are these images from? Yeah, sorry.
Cixi does not count as a female emperor of China. She never ruled legitimately. There are plenty of powerful empress dowagers in Chinese history. In fact, it's the true highest position in the imperial Chinese hierarchy, but only Wu Zetian ruled alone and legitimately, with her own dynasty. Anyway, at the end of our last episode, Wu Zetian had become empress. Everything was good now, right? No.
Oh gosh.
Her rivals, the deposed Empress Wang and consort Xiao, were still alive. They'd been banished to what was known as...
Yeah, they were essentially like, what, under a type of house arrest, if I remember correctly. They're just locked up in like in a place in the palace, I think, and just kind of left there. Like they would just kind of slide in food. Like, almost like prison. Like, they were in like solitary confinement together, so, yeah.
The Cold Palace, which referred to the shoddy residences where disgraced court ladies spent the rest of their lonely, miserable lives. But they were still alive nonetheless. And Wu Zetian, who had made a comeback from a nunnery, knew better than anyone else that as long as you're alive, you have another chance. And ancient Chinese sirens immediately went off in her head when, before the month was even over, Gaozong visited the Cold Palace. He was aghast to discover his former wives being imprisoned in a chamber where all the doors and windows were boarded up and they could only receive food through a hole in the wall. Peering through the hole, he called out, "Empress Wang and Consort Xiao, where are you?" They were like, "Your Majesty, you've already charged us as criminals. There is no empress or consort here anymore." So they were subtly berating him for putting them in this situation at first. But they also saw hope in the fact that he's visiting at all. So they added, "But if your Majesty will think of the times we shared and let us see the sun and moon again, please rename this place Heart-Changing Residence, and we will serve you for the rest of our lives." Because ancient Chinese people are just dramatic like that. So these dramatic words quickly made it to Wu Zetian through her spy network of service workers. Before Gaozong could have that change of heart, she confronted him. She told him, "Your Majesty, I know you went to see them. But do you not realize how precarious of a situation we are in? You went against so much pressure to make this Empress change happen. The entire court remains uncertain about how you will continue to wield your power. If you show hesitance now, show that you are already second-guessing a decision as big as this, what will our allies think? What will our enemies think? To this, Gaozong was like, yeah, you're right.
Dang. Oh, wait.
Let's kill them.
Literally told him to lock in. But it's true, though. Like, you have to... We've seen a lot, like, with power grabs in history. And the idea of leaving your rivals alive. At times, like, you know, like with the medieval era, they usually just resorted to blinding them. So they couldn't rule. But, like, a lot of other times in history, you just killed them. Because, again, they're a threat. As long as they're alive, right? So yeah, like I said, like Wu did I think Wu did everything that we've seen most, you know, men do in various points in history and other places. And, you know, she played the game, and you kind of have to be ruthless in that respect. Especially when you're that power. Like, obviously we can judge in our modern 21st century morals and standards, like everyone. When I was in a class, we were reading the Odyssey. Like, before I graduated with my bachelor's in English from university, one of my last classes, we were reading the Odyssey, and there was this one guy in the class who just kept talking about how Odysseus is terrible, you know, because Odysseus looted cities and, you know, killed people and took slaves and all that. And, you know, like, every class he would just talk about, even when we were done with the Odyssey and moved on months after, he would still bring up how Odysseus was terrible. And then I remember I went up and in class and I just said, yeah, by our modern sensibilities, you know, it's a little, we could judge most of history and most people in the past as evil because a lot happened, but that was common practice in war. When you looted or killed cities, usually women and children were taken as slaves, men were killed. It was pretty common practice. Like, you know, that was the norm. Like, that was just, you know, how things were done. I mean, granted, not to say modern war is great or that it's like, you know, any less brutal, but it is, you know what I mean, right? Like, I feel like we could easily judge people from the past as all evil, and again, if we look at everything through our modern way of thinking, yeah, most people in the past are evil. Napoleon's evil, Alexander the Great's evil, Julius Caesar's, like, you get me? But I'm of the opinion that I don't judge people from the past fully by our modern standards. You get me? Like, I'm not a believer in that. That's why, like, you know, I'm like, it was a different time. Things were different for sure, and, you know, and again, like, it's almost like you can't be a fully nice person when you're, like, doing these intricate coups and political maneuvering in courts, because if you're too nice and passive, chances are you're gonna die. So, you know, it's ruthless for sure, but, like, I'm understanding that that's just the world they inhabited, you get me? So, I don't know. That's my opinion. I know some people still judge people from the past by our modern standards and easily write them off as not good or whatnot, but like I said, I prefer not to, because I'm like, well, they didn't have our modern laws or standards, and things were different like 2,000 years ago or like centuries ago. You get me? I don't know. That's just my opinion. You might not agree with me or not, but that's just how I feel.
If you ever find yourself digitally banished to the Cold Palace, unable to access the content you want because of geo-restrictions imposed on you, how did Empress Wang and Consort Xiao react to their execution order? It's interesting, actually, because you can really see the differences in their personalities by their last words. Empress Wang kowtowed twice and said, "Long live His Majesty, and blessings to concubine Wu. It is only natural for me to accept this death." Sounds graceful, but here's the thing. Listen to what she called Wu Zetian. Concubine Wu, not Empress Wu. Till her last breath, Empress Wang refused to recognize Wu Zetian as Empress. To her death, she refused to drop her aristocratic pride. Meanwhile,
definitely faced death with dignity and cited in a little insult right there. Well, not really a little, but, you know, an insult. So, honestly, not a bad way to face the end, huh?
Now, Consort Xiao just started yelling. It's that conniving Wu bitch who has landed me here. May I reincarnate as a cat, and she as a mouse, so I may crush your throat in all our next lives. As we can see, her personality was indeed very similar to Wu Zetian's. That's why Gaozong liked her, but not enough to spare her life, even though she's the mother of 3 of his children, apparently. According to legend, Wu Zetian proceeded to execute Empress Wang and Consort Xiao in an extremely brutal way. They were each flogged 100 times with wooden planks, which was a common punishment in the imperial Chinese court. Then their arms and legs were cut off, and they were drowned in vats of wine. Let these bitches get drunk to their bones.
Holy crap. Yeah, that's the one I heard about. I think that's the one where it's like people were like, okay, maybe this is a little exaggerated from extra histories telling, where he brought into a lot of light that probably some things with Wu were probably way more exaggerated. I mean, he didn't dispute, yeah, she definitely killed them, but not like that probably, just like, you know, not as dramatically, just, you know. I do believe that. I think this is definitely overly the top, you know.
Wu Zetian said. Then, about 10 days later, she gave birth to her second son. So she did all of that empress changing and torture and murder while on the verge of labor. Bruh.
Dang.
Also, she gave birth to this son while on her way with Gaozong to pay their respects at his dad's mausoleum. You know, his dad, who is simultaneously her ex-husband and her father-in-law. Bruh. Though, because of the tight timeline between the birth of her daughter that died mysteriously and the second son, some suspect that this son was not hers, but her sister's, who reportedly had an affair with Gaozong around the same time. I don't know what it is about Wu family women, but Gaozong could not get enough of them. He also bangs her niece later on. Just wait. Anyway,
oh my goodness.
After seeing all this happen, Gaozong's 14-year-old eldest son, who had been made crown prince during the harem drama, volunteered to give up his position. But Gaozong was like, I don't want the world to think we made you do this. So he waited for an official to formally suggest a change in crown prince. The one who stepped up was Xu Jingzong, whose existence originated the Chinese saying, a smile that hides a knife. He submitted a petition that said, back in the beginning of your majesty's reign, a true heir had yet to be born, so there was no choice but to illuminate the realm with the light of a comet. But now that the true sun has been born, how could we still let a comet shine in its place? The sun thing isn't meant to be a pun, by the way. It's just a metaphor. The pun only works in English. But anyway, after reading the petition, Gaozong summoned Xu Jingzong, asking him if he had any other reasons to back up the crown prince change. Xu Jingzong was like, of course, your majesty. First of all, it's a matter of the stability of the empire itself. The current crown prince was low-born and adopted by a now deposed empress. He will no doubt be threatened by Empress Wu's eldest son, who is now the true firstborn formal son. As you must know, bad things happen when crown princes get insecure. Gaozong, who got his throne because his brothers tried to kill each other, was like, okay, yeah, those are good enough reasons. And so he deposed his crown prince and gave him the title the Prince of Liang, so he could go fuck off to the Liang province. Tang Dynasty emperors just really did not care about their children who were not of their empress. But while all of this was happening, what was Gaozong's uncle Zhang Sun Wuji doing? You know, the uncle who sternly opposed Wu Zetian becoming empress? Well, seeing that his nephew wasn't listening to him anymore, Zhang Sun Wuji retreated from politics and focused on compiling histories. Specifically, the records of what happened during the reign of Gaozong's father and grandfather, and also the comprehensive history of the Sui dynasty before them. In ancient China, there's a tradition of the new dynasty compiling historical records for the dynasty they overthrew. This way, they can learn from that previous dynasty's mistakes. Theoretically. What Gaozong and Wu Zetian had learned was that you cannot let your enemies live to seek another chance. Even though Zhang Sun Wuji was technically retired, he was still a threat. He was still held in too high of a regard in the court, so the new imperial married couple gradually went after his allies and relatives. Remember when Gaozong tried to make Wu Zetian the consort of the Polar Star, and 2 chancellors submitted petitions against it? About a year after she became empress, she randomly submitted a petition to Gaozong for him to reward the 2 chancellors, thanking them for reminding her of her place. Now, if you get a thanks like this from Wu Zetian, you should be very, very afraid. One of these chancellors, Han Yuan, I don't know if he was acting out of fear or if he naively believed Wu Zetian was conceding to him for real, but he then tried to petition for the return of Chu Suiliang, the chancellor who got demoted from the capital for chucking his jade tablet in court and having a screaming match with Wu Zetian.
Oh my gosh.
The empire would fall without Chu Suiliang, Han Yuan said. This only pissed Gaozong off because, well, what do you mean the empire would fall to ruin without that one guy? Do you think I'm not a good enough emperor? So he demoted Chu Suiliang to an even further province at the very south of modern China. Not long after, Xu Jingzong, Mr. the former crown prince was only a comet, accused Han Yuan of trying to get Chu Suiliang summoned back because they were plotting treason together. Han Yuan got demoted out of the capital too, and Chu Suiliang got kicked even further. So far that he was in Vietnam, like not even within the scope of modern China anymore, because the Tang Dynasty had a province in Vietnam. Through maneuvers like this, Wu Zetian and Gaozong chipped away at the power and influence of the senior officials who dared oppose them, and replaced those officials with newbies who were easier to control. After 2 years of this, they got the big chance they were waiting for to take down Zhangsun Wuji himself. The scenario was that 2 low-level officials were accused to have had improper associations with a high-level official. Improper as in like corruption or bribery. It wasn't clear who the high-level official was, so Wu Zetian seized the opportunity and suggested that Gaozong send Xu Jingzong to investigate the case. Xu Jingzong immediately read between the lines and realized what the emperor and empress really wanted him to do. So he violently interrogated the 2 low officials while signaling to them that their torture would end as long as they give up Zhangsun Wuji's name as the official they were having corrupt dealings with. But it just so happened that these officials were very honest. One of them tried to kill himself by ramming his head into the wall of his prison rather than falsely implicate Zhangsun Wuji. But Xu Jingzong twisted this.
Dang. Talk about integrity, holy crap.
Into a suicide attempt out of guilt, which was a frequent accusation in ancient China. There was this belief that only guilty prisoners commit suicide because they'd be avoiding punishment worse than death. But honestly, in cases like these, if the emperor wanted you to be guilty, you'd be guilty no matter what.
I'm Noelle.
This ain't a democracy. This was why Xu Jingzong then had the confidence to stroll into the palace and announce to Gaozong that he had finished the interrogation and discovered that this was not a simple corruption case. It was a conspiracy that extended all the way up to Zhangsun Wuji, who was making corrupt dealings with other officials. Gaozong was like, what? I know my uncle and I have had a strained relationship these past few years, but how could he have been plotting treason? Seems like an innocent question, but think carefully about the words he used. He was actually escalating the charges Xu Jingzong had presented. Treason is a lot more serious than corruption. Xu Jingzong never used the word treason, but now Gaozong has, and Xu Jingzong—
Wow, dude, the double meanings of the words and just how they simply add in a word and that changes everything, right? Like all this subtlety, holy crap. Like I said, this is literally just, yeah, like Game of Thrones, you know? But even more, like, all this political maneuvering is insane, dude. Wow, so interesting.
was smart enough to understand what Gaozong was really saying. It's not enough for my uncle to be deposed. I want him dead. Xu Jingzong went along with it, saying, Your Majesty, there is more than—
Yeah, Xinjiang? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But point is, this guy is incredibly smart, huh? He's basically becoming their, like, hitman. he really reads in between the lines well, because my dumb butt would be like, yeah, it's kind of sucks he's doing that, huh? I would not catch on that he wants him dead. I would not make it, dude. I'd be dead so quickly in this time. Actually, I'd be dead at any time. I don't think I would be able to politically maneuver anything.
Enough evidence that your uncle has been plotting treason. You must not waver any longer. Gaozong then started sobbing on the throne like, Oh my Chinese gods, there have been so many tragedies in my family, with my relatives going against each other. My sister and her husband plotted a coup against me just a few years ago, and now my uncle has done the same. I don't know how I can face the masses after this. If it's true, what should I do? Another statement that seems innocent innocent, but is packed full of shady hints. This time, Gaozong was really saying that he wanted this case prosecuted exactly like how his sister's case had been prosecuted by Zhang Wuji, as in implicating as many political enemies in the case as possible.
Holy.
Everyone in the court is playing 3D chess.
I know, right? That's amazing. Just the amount of double meanings that seemingly innocent words can hold, and all these people interpreting it. Like I said, I just wouldn't get it. I'd be like, oh yeah, that was interesting, huh? I wouldn't know what to do. Oh boy. This is amazing. Everyone is just using all these chess maneuvers to really get everything they want. This is awesome.
Okay, Xu Jingzong understood the assignment instantly. So he came back the next day like, "Oh, your majesty, the scope of this case is far greater than I imagined. Through more investigation, I have discovered that almost all the senior officials are involved." Then he proceeded to give a list of names that included most of those who were against Wu Zetian becoming empress. Then Gaozong was crying in the throne room again like, "Oh my Chinese gods, even if my uncle orchestrated all of this, I couldn't bear to kill him. If I killed him, what would the people say? What would future generations say?" This time, he was just saying that he didn't want to bear the responsibility of directly killing his uncle. I know there's been a lot of murder so far, but it's still at least a little frowned upon in those times to kill your family members. Filial piety, Confucian values and all. So the judgment was that all of the officials implicated would be demoted and exiled to frontier provinces. Once they were there and isolated from each other, Xu Jingzong was like, "Actually, this isn't over. I need to record more detailed confessions." And so he sent a bunch of lackeys to go talk to those officials. Those lackeys basically traveled to those different places and forced the officials to commit suicide. So that is how Zhao Wuji, 30-year veteran chancellor of the Tang Dynasty, died.
Holy crap. Wow. All this maneuvering and hidden and veiled threats and meanings. It's... Wow. That's just awesome. Dang. He really messed with the wrong person. Unfortunately, because I think she mentioned last video that he did seem to at least have the best interest, perhaps, in mind, perhaps, of the Emperor, but he was just too powerful, too influential, and he happened to oppose the wrong woman, so it ended up in his death. Yeah, it kind of goes to show you're always walking on a tightrope. Even if you're in a high position, you're always walking on a tightrope that you could easily fall off from any moment. So yeah, dang.
Forced to commit suicide by the nephew he lifted to the throne. The sons of these officials were all executed, and their grandsons were exiled to the frontier. The result of this was that most officials with aristocratic backgrounds were cleared from the court, and their positions were filled by the commoner-born officials who supported Wu Zetian. This was actually an extremely significant event in Chinese history, because for the past 400 years, the Emperor of China had been forced to share a lot of power with the aristocratic families that dominated the capital region. It was said that the children of aristocrats were like the grass that grew on mountains, while the children of commoners were like the pines that grew at mountain bottom. No matter how high the children of commoners reached, they would never get to even the starting point of aristocrats. But this bloodbath changed everything. After years of scheming, Gaozong and Wu Zetian finally had absolute power in their hands.
Wow.
So what were they going to do next? Take a vacation to Wu Zetian's hometown. There, she held a feast for all her relatives and old neighbors. Gaozong spoiled her good. He announced that he would give all the old women of the town who were over 80 years of age a rank 5 title. Wu Zetian also convinced him to give her deceased father the title of the Duke of Zhou, while her living mother, Lady Yang, was given the title the Duchess of Rong. This is super interesting because normally, the wife of a lord should share his title, so Lady Yang should have been made the Duchess of Zhou, but Wu Zetian deliberately gave her mother a different title to show the world that her honors didn't come from marrying an impressive husband, but giving birth to an impressive daughter.
Wow.
By custom, Wu Zetian's brothers and male cousins, the ones who bullied her and her mother years ago, were promoted too, going from lowly rank 7 and 8 officials to rank 4, pretty decently up there. One night, Lady Yang held a family banquet and was like, remember what's happened in the past? Things sure are different now, aren't they? What do you think about all that your sister has done for you? But the brothers still believed they were better than Wu Zetian and her mom just because they had penises. They were like, we were officials because our father had done much for the dynasty. We were fine with our ranks. We didn't need these promotions. In fact, it's quite intimidating to be propped so high just because of our sister. Lady Yang was furious, so she stormed to the palace and was like, Zetian, demote your brothers. But don't say it's because they pissed me off. Tell the public that you were selflessly tampering the influence that your family has in the court, which is considered a noble thing for an empress to do, because it usually means that she is willingly giving up support in the court. But Wu Zetian and her brothers didn't like each other anyway, so she banished them, and then her brothers soon died very mysteriously at the—
Yeah, definitely them being promoted, from 7 to 4, probably a lot nicer than I think, considering all things considered of their past. So I felt like that was kind of a bit of a nice thing that Wu did for them. And yeah, they essentially, their own gratitude kind of led to all that, huh? Yeah, that dang. Holy crap.
Priestess they were demoted to. We can tell through this story that Wu Zetian's mother was just as fierce as her. The women of the Tang dynasty were something else. At this point, the former crown prince Li Zhong, now 18 years old, was so paranoid that he constantly feared being assassinated at night. He and all of Gaozong's other sons that Wu Zetian had not given birth to had long since been demoted away from the capital. But he could not shake the terror that Wu Zetian would come after him to finish the job one day. So he got into the habit of dressing in drag and sleeping in a different location each night.
Wow.
But careful as he was, he got in trouble anyway when a maidservant of his ran to the capital Chang'an and accused him of talking treasonous things in his sleep. So Gaozong was like,
Gaza's pop.
and kill him then.
Oh my
but
gosh.
Wu Zetian took this chance to perform the role of a gracious empress. She went to Gaozong, sobbing and begging for him to spare Li Zhong. Gaozong then made a huge deal announcing to the entire empire that Li Zhong was planning to commit treason and should have been executed, but because the empress pleaded so thoughtfully on his behalf, he decided to merely confine him to house arrest. How sweet. If only it wasn't extremely likely that Wu Zetian had planted the tattling maidservant in Li Zhong's estate to begin with. I'm not sure if she successfully fooled anyone into thinking she's a gracious empress, but later that year, 33-year-old Gaozong suffered a debilitating stroke. We can only speculate on whether she caused this, but his family does actually—
Dang, dude. Everything she does is like one giant 3D chess move. She just never stops playing chess. Again, you have to get by in this world, and she just did it better than most. It's amazing.
have a history of cardiovascular problems. His high blood pressure gave him migraines and messed with his vision, so much that he had to entrust most of the state affairs to 37-year-old Wu Zetian. After all, his crown prince was too young, and his most powerful officials had been replaced by newbies. So from this point on, Wu Zetian did more governing of the empire than him. After this went on for 4 years, a rift formed between them, because love means nothing in the face of power. In the year 664, a eunuch accused 41-year-old Wu Zetian of using voodoo dolls, the same crime she once pinned on Empress Wang. How could a eunuch have the guts to accuse an empress, though? It's likely that he was sent by Gaozong to spy on her, looking for an excuse to take her down a level because she was getting way too powerful. But how severely should she be punished? Gaozong asked one of his chancellors then, Shang Guanyi. To his shock, Shang Guanyi responded with, "The people have long thought the empress too powerful. Please dispose her." Why would he say this? Well, you see, Shang Guanyi was one of the first chancellors to rise through the imperial examination system instead of by aristocratic connections. And what is tested in the imperial exams? Confucian classics. So Shang Guanyi was a staunch Confucian who believed that women had no place in politics. Gaozong was still angry at Wu Zetian at this point, so he hastily agreed and ordered Shang Guanyi to draft the edict to depose her. However, before the ink on the edict even dried, Wu Zetian learned of the development through her spy network and rushed to the council chamber. First, she sobbed about how much she had done for Gaozong all these years. Then she angrily asked him what exactly she had done wrong. This combination of soft and hard tactics, expertly targeting this emperor she had been married to for over a decade, made him second-guess himself in record time.
Wow.
He was like, oh no, it wasn't my idea. It was Shang Guanyi's. The records did not say what Shang Guanyi's reaction was, but it was probably some variation of Soon, Xu Jingzong used his good old false accusation plus false implication to combat.
Dang, dude, he got screwed over at the end because of what the Emperor apparently maybe wanted to do. Dude, she is good. Wow. She is good. And again, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how powerful you are, you're always walking on a tightrope in one way or another, huh? Like, you can easily fall out of favor in like a millisecond. So yeah, what a danger. Dude, I'd be so paranoid. Like, I'm already kind of paranoid as a person. Like, I would just like probably fall apart and go insane at this point, because this is way too much.
Move to claim that Shang Guanyi and the eunuch who slandered Wu Zetian and the former crown prince Li Zhong were planning treason together. All three of them! So they were all executed. Interestingly, Shang Guanyi had an infant granddaughter, Shang Guan Waner, who was made a slave in the palace because of this, but after she became a teenager, she would prove to have so much literary talent that Wu Zetian would make her imperial secretary. So much for women having no place in politics, though that's much later on. The immediate impact that this incident had on Wu Zetian was that she realized even being empress was not enough to guarantee her safety. Her life was still in the hands of Gaozong and could be thrown away in an instant. This is very likely what sparked—
What a terrifying life to lead. Like I said, the paranoia. Like, it doesn't matter how long you've known someone or have been close to them. They will the fact that they could just turn on you and like get you killed. Oh man, dude. Wow.
Her ambitions of becoming emperor herself. As her first real step toward that, she told Gaozong, "Your Majesty, you are too easily influenced by others, especially the officials, who may not have your best interests at heart. How about from now on, I sit in on the council meetings with you, so I can always give you a second opinion on what they say." Gaozong was still in a state of shame and regret after the Shang Guanyi incident, so he agreed. With that, the officials began to call them the Two Sages, as if there were two suns in the sky.
Wow.
Then, Wu Zetian convinced Gaozong to conduct the Fengshan ceremony, the single most sacred ceremony in ancient China. Only 6 emperors out of over 300 in Chinese history have thought they had the right to conduct this ceremony. What you do is you take your entire court and make offerings to the heaven and earth at Mount Tai, a sacred mountain in northeast China. Gaozong's dad, Tai Zong, wanted to do it, and many historians would argue that he was definitely in the right to do so, but his officials at the time said that his economy wasn't strong enough for him to qualify. But at this point in Gaozong and Wu Zetian's reign, the economy was strong, and so were their borders, and so was their approval rating. According to tradition, though, the empress had no place in the ceremony. It was the emperor who made offerings to heaven.
Yeah, if I remember correctly from the extra history telling, she actually does conduct it, doesn't she? Which is a pretty big statement, obviously, because again, the emperor should have done it, so I think it was supposed to make a statement of her ambition or something. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been many months since I watched the Wu series from extra history, but I'm pretty sure she ends up conducting it, right?
And the officials who made offerings to Earth. So Wu Zetian was like, I think that tradition has it all wrong. The heavens represent masculinity, while the Earth represents femininity. The empresses of the past are included in those who will receive the offerings to the Earth. Therefore, how could a bunch of men make these offerings? It will make much more sense for me, the empress, to lead that part of the ceremony. Gaozong was like, alright, that logic checks out. And so they headed off to Mount Tai with everyone in tow. All the court ladies, the entire court of officials, envoys from Japan, the Harsha Empire in North India, the 3 Korean kingdoms, the Persian Sasanian court in exile, the Turkic tribes, the kingdom of Khatan, the Khmer Empire, and the Umayyad Caliphate, and of course an army to protect all these important people. The procession added up to tens of thousands of people, and the travel took months.
Dang, dude. My goodness, talk about a grand procession. I didn't know that they invited so many people, like the Umayyads and obviously the Persians, the former Sasanian Persians who were in exile. Dang, I don't remember about hearing that. Basically, everybody got invited at this. That's actually really cool.
But in Wu Zetian's mind, it was all worth it to elevate her image and immortalize herself in the annals of Chinese history. She and Gaozong make up 2 of the 6 emperors to have conducted this ceremony. Afterward, Wu Zetian gave all the officials promotions and raises, so they were happy with hassle. Also, there was something minor that Wu Zetian took care of during the ceremony.
Dang it.
Remember when I said Gaozong had an affair with Wu Zetian's sister? Well, that sister had died at some point, and then the sister's daughter, Wu Zetian's niece, suspected Wu Zetian of murder. So the niece also had an affair with Gaozong in hopes of taking Wu Zetian's place.
Wait, let me get that again. I am so sorry.
Remember when I said Gaozong had an affair with Wu Zetian's sister? Well, that sister had died at some point, and then the sister's daughter, Wu Zetian's niece, suspected Wu Zetian.
Okay, wait, is the daughter is she a okay? No, is she a different daughter from a different guy? Because for a second there, I was like, oh, is she like the emperor's daughter technically? So wouldn't that just be In's? Okay. Alright, sorry. For a second there, I read it as that. I got really like, oh. Okay. I mean, it's so weird, even if they're not, like, blood related, you get me? Because it's still kind of in the family, but... but okay.
Of murder. So the niece also had an affair with Gaozong in hopes of taking Wu Zetian's place. Oh, this foolish little girl. She was among the procession that went to Mount Tai, and so were 2 of Wu Zetian's male cousins, who Wu Zetian also hated. But the cousins knew they had to respect her, so they gifted her some exquisite food, a pretty standard method of kissing up. When Wu Zetian gazed down on the tribute of food, though, an idea came to her. She took the food to her niece and was like, oh wow, look at this amazing food that your cousins once removed sent over. Come, let's eat it together. Her niece did eat it, and then proceeded to drop dead. The food had been poisoned.
Oh.
Wu Zetian's cousins were accused of trying to poison her, and they were executed. It was 3 annoying family members, 1 dish.
Holy crap, the amount of family members these guys have murdered is insane. Just, the family keeps dropping like flies. You know, you think someone outside looking at it is like, huh, that's weird, your entire family's getting murdered, like, in quick succession. Yeah, I imagine there were people there who realized what was going on. They just kept their mouth shut because they didn't want anything to happen to them. But I like to think like some more like, you know, perceptive people were definitely watching all this go down and just like, holy crap, like these people are insane. I don't want to mess with them, you know?
Food. However, there's a saying in China, when the moon becomes full, it must wane. When the sun reaches its peak, it must fall. In the year 670, 4 years after the Fengshan ceremony, a bunch of calamity struck at once. The Tang armies suffered an unprecedented defeat by the Tibetan Empire and the western frontier, and there were droughts and grain shortages everywhere else, and Wu Zetian's mother, Lady Yang, died at age 92, so... Yeah.
Oh.
Whispers among the court blamed Wu Zetian for the calamities, saying she was angering heaven by taking so much power. Therefore, she petitioned Gaozong to remove her from her position, saying she has failed the empire. Wow, did she really give up that easily? Absolutely not. You heard the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. But the inverse is also true. Great responsibility comes from great power. Being held responsible for something implies that you had the power to dictate it in the first place. So if Gaozong had actually deposed Wu Zetian for failing the empire, he would be admitting that it was she who'd been in charge of state affairs, not him. Therefore, Gaozong was
Oh, dude, what a genius play. Oh my goodness. Holy crap. Dude, she's a genius.
like, oh no, you are staying right where you are. Then he threw her mother a lavish funeral and even
literally like played on his price. Like, I cannot admit that you have that much power, so you will stay forever. Like, dude, she plays him like a fiddle. It's kind of amazing. Like, She really like has this dude like nailed, you know what I mean?
Personally wrote Lady Yang's epitaph. Wu Zetian gave her mother the posthumous title of Zhonglie, loyal and strong, a distinctly male-sounding title. Another 4 years later, after the calamities had long passed, 51-year-old Wu Zetian submitted yet another petition to 47-year-old Gaozong. She was like, "Your Majesty, don't you think it's a little distasteful for us to use the titles of our ancestors?" Because in China, even modern China, they're so weird about names that it's considered extremely rude to refer to an elder by their given name. And when it comes to emperors, this naming taboo is taken to such extremes that when someone becomes emperor, even common terms that happen to share characters with his given name need to be changed. For example, you know the moon goddess Chang'e? Not her original name. She was Heng'e in ancient myth, but then came an emperor in the Han Dynasty whose name was Liu Hen, and so the name of this goddess was changed to respect the imperial naming taboo.
Dang.
Now, the naming taboo doesn't actually apply to titles, but Wu Zetian used this as an excuse to suggest that she and Gaozong give themselves new titles. Instead of Huangdi and Huanghou, the traditional titles for emperor and empress, they began to use Tianhuang and Tianhou, heavenly emperor and heavenly empress. Fun fact, the Tang Dynasty had such strong influence on Japan that Tianhuang got adopted as the title for the Emperor of Japan, and it's still in use, even though it got abolished in China after Wu Zetian's reign. But man, you can see her ambition over...
Dang, dude. And she's not, like, sometimes, like, she's very subtle, but there are other times she just, like, it comes across as she's just walking up to him, like, "Hey, can we just do this?" And he's like, "Alright." Alright, whatever you say, honey. Like, you know. Huh.
flowing in moves like this. She was always trying to stand out, always trying to do something different. And it wasn't all for show. She was a legitimately good administrator. There's a famous 12 suggestions that she gave to Gaozong at the end of this year, and it included stuff like lessening warfare, lessening labor burdens, lessening major construction projects, producing fewer luxury items for the palace, giving low and mid-level officials better benefits and salaries, and giving timely promotions to officials who do well. She gave a lot of thought to those at the bottom, and these suggestions also included a hint of feminism.
Hello.
Before her time, the mandated mourning period for when your mother died was different depending on whether your father was alive. And by mourning, I mean there are specific things you have to do, like always wearing coarse white robes and refraining from excessive partying. If your father was already dead when your mother died, you mourned for a full 3 years. If he was alive, though, you were only allowed to mourn for 1 year, because there was this sense of, well, you gotta save your highest respects for your father. Wu Zetian said no to this tradition. She made it so you had to mourn your mother for 3 years no matter what. This essentially elevated the position of the mother to the same level as that of the father. At this point...
Dude, she's breaking out all kinds of barriers, huh? Like, I really admire that. She's just going for it, you know? Constantly making change and isn't, like, afraid to try to. Like, I really do admire that about her. Definitely kind of, like, breaking a lot of social precedents and trying to establish new ones. Can't help but respect that.
Gaozong's health was so poor that it was time to think about what would happen after he died. They had a crown prince, Li Hong, but he had even worse health problems. As a child, he caught tuberculosis. This was basically a sentence to a short life in those times. His condition was so bad that he couldn't really make it to council meetings. And in the year 675, 24-year-old Li Hong severely pissed 52-year-old Wu Zetian off. What had happened was that he had been taking a walk in this inner palace and stumbled upon the residence that held his two sisters from consort Xiao. They were in their 20s now, and he was horrified to discover that they were so neglected, they didn't even know how to speak anymore. So he submitted a petition for them to be married off. Wu Zetian was furious that he would bring them up. Like, wow, do you not know how hard I had to work to bring down consort Xiao? You would have died if I had failed.
Oh my gosh.
So she hastily married the princesses off to two palace guards. Some historical records claim that she remained so pissed off at Li Hong for this that she soon poisoned him in secret. He died in this same year, shortly after Gaozong talked about passing the throne to him. Very suspicious, huh? Thing is, we can't really conclude whether she did it or not, because again, he's had tuberculosis since he was a kid. In Gaozong's own announcement of Li Hong's death, he claimed that he told Li Hong he'd pass the throne to him to encourage him to get better. So it's likely that Li Hong had been close to death, and Gaozong had made the promise in hopes of giving him the strength to recover, but accidentally got him so excited that he just dropped dead. Also,
Oh, that's sad. But also there's a possibility that she did just kill him. You never know, like, both are incredibly plausible, I feel.
and didn't really have a reason to go as far as killing Li Hong at this point. This is why, even in trying to slander her, historians had to reach for the one time that he brought up his sisters. But who knows what the truth is, we weren't there. Li Hong was posthumously given an emperor title, and his 22-year-old brother Li Xian became the next crown prince. Li Xian was much stronger in mind and body, and was the son most like Wu Zetian. But just 3 months later, Gaozong suddenly summoned his officials and announced that he wanted to make Wu Zetian regent. This was because he was so sick that he could barely get out of bed. But he didn't want to straight up abdicate the throne because he had a sliver of hope that he could still get better one day. If he gave his administrative power to his wife Wu Zetian, he had hope of one day taking it back. If he gave the power to his heir, though, taking it back is not so simple. But his chancellors immediately spoke up against the idea, like, "Your Majesty, how could you give the empire that your father and grandfather built to the empress instead of your own children?" So Gaozong had to give up the idea. The incident made Wu Zetian realize that the chancellors are ultimately against the idea of her having more power, and therefore they could not be trusted. So she created her own group of intellectual advisors, the Northgate Scholars. Her official excuse was that she just wanted a group of scholars to compile books for her to read, but this was her way of diluting the influence of the chancellors. Whenever an issue would come up, she would discuss it with the Northgate Scholars before taking it to the chancellors. They did compile over 1,000 books too, including biographies of notable women. Interesting. Meanwhile, Li Xian, the crown prince, assembled a group of his own scholars to compile books. The historical records of the Han Dynasty in particular. This is possibly significant because the Han Dynasty was an era known for having a lot of powerful empresses and concubines that interfered in politics, so it could have been a message to his mother. Well, Wu Zetian then sent Li Xian her own message. She ordered the Northgate Scholars to give him books that advised on how to be a proper crown prince and how to be a filial, respectful son, which was basically accusing him of not being good at either.
Wow.
When Li Xian got the books, he threw them aside, leading her to write a sternly worded letter reprimanding him for not reading them. Around the same time, the shaman/physician who helped heal Gaozong's headaches started continuously talking smack about Li Xian. He claimed that in his conversations with the spirits, they would always shake their heads at Li Xian and talk about how much better Wu Zetian's third or fourth son would be in the crown prince position. Li Xian was of course livid at this shaman, and one day the shaman was found dead on the outskirts of the capital. An extensive investigation failed to find who had done it. But the one place they hadn't looked was the crown prince's estate. They couldn't search that estate with no evidence though, so Wu Zetian's people captured Li Xian's male lover Zhao Daoshen and interrogated him. Yes, like his uncle Li Chenqian, Li Xian was at least bisexual. It seemed to run in the family. Wu Zetian's people were only hoping to get some usable information out of Zhao Daoshen, but under torture, he confessed that he was the one who assassinated the shaman. Soldiers were immediately sent to search the crown prince.
Dang. Oh yeah, I think Extra History brought this up. I think it's starting to come back to me, but yo, that's wild.
Estate, and what they found was beyond their imagination. Several hundred suits of armor in the stable. This went explicitly against the Tang laws about personal possession of weapons, so Li Xian was charged with treason and banished out of the capital. 4 years later, he will be forced to commit suicide at age 29. Also implicated were the many chancellors and imperial relatives close to Li Xian. Among them was Gao Zhen, Gaozong's uncle's grandson, and an official in Li Xian's former entourage. The Gao family was already on edge because of their relation to Gaozong's supposedly treasonous uncle, but the prosecutor's attitude toward Gao Zhen was like, whatever. His ancestors made great contributions to the dynasty. Just let him go home and be disciplined there. But the moment he stepped inside his house, his dad swung a dagger across his throat, his uncle stabbed a dagger into his stomach, and his cousin decapitated him. And then
Oh my goodness.
threw his headless body out into the street. This was their declaration that whatever treasonous things this kid did has absolutely nothing to do with us. Well, how did Wu Zetian react to this? She laughed. Laughed at how these were the kinds of cowardly men she was dealing with. Gaozong was
Dang, dude.
pretty much on his deathbed too. In the year 683, there happened to be a drought in the western capital of Chang'an, so 60-year-old Wu Zetian convinced the 56-year-old Gaozong to go to the eastern capital of Luoyang, where there were better food supply chains. But you know what was also in Luoyang? Mostly common-born officials who were considered loyal to Wu Zetian. She also tried to convince Gaozong to make offerings at Mount Song near Luoyang, but once they got there, his hypertension had gotten so bad that he went blind. Interestingly, he was treated by a doctor from the Byzantine Empire, like a white guy, who managed to restore Gaozong's vision with a combination of bloodletting and acupuncture.
That is cool. Yo, I didn't know, like, about the Byzantines and their, like, dealings with China. Or at least, like, someone from the Byzantine, like, made it there and was, like, apparently able to, like, just do that. That is so cool. Yeah, the various cultures that are being mentioned, like the Umayyads and the Persians that are just popping up are really cool. Yeah.
Real East-West fusion medicine right there. In thanks, Wu Zetian personally carried 100 bolts of silk from the harem to gift to the doctor, so maybe she didn't actually want Gaozong to die. But it was inevitable. On the last day of his life, he did a mass pardon of criminals in hopes of collecting good karma, but couldn't even make it out of bed to do the announcement. His final recorded words were, "I wish I had one more month, so I could have died in Chang'an." Li Zhe, Wu Zetian's 28-year-old third son, was crown prince at this point. Technically, his name is Li Xian, but it's so close to his brother Li Xian that even back then, they were like, oh no, we gotta give you a different name. One fun fact about him is that when he was a month old, he was made a disciple of the famous monk Xuanzang, as in the historical inspiration for the monk from Journey to the West. Also, just a random fact.
Wow, that is interesting. I tried reading Journey of the West. I got through like the first few pages, but like back like 10 years ago, because I was going through like this kind of like weird like time where I was just reading epics, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Iliad, and whatnot, and Ovid's like metamorphoses. Yeah, I never fully actually got through the Journey of the West, but it is quite the long tail, you know. So yeah, but that's cool.
But Gaozong's dad Taizong was in Journey to the West. It was said that he got dragged down to the underworld for one night and had to go through all 18 levels of hell to escape, which was what led to his decision to send Xuanzang into India to get Buddhist manuscripts in the first place. Anyway, Gaozong's last will read that Li Zhe should take the throne immediately and go to the Heavenly Empress for advice on any state affairs that can't be decided. This is the first time that an emperor has given an empress explicit administrative powers on his deathbed. Some suspect Wu Zetian may have faked the will, but Gaozong did have sufficient reason to leave her with some power. First of all, Li Zhe was known to be impulsive and irresponsible. He wasn't raised to be a ruler, and when he happened to become crown prince because his two older brothers died, he kept focusing on his hobbies like chicken fighting instead of reading the many official documents that were sent his way. Secondly, Gaozong didn't trust the senior chancellors to be given too much power because of his own experiences. He basically only trusted Wu Zetian. You may think this is foolish, but in the historical circumstances he was in, where there had never been a woman on the throne before, he could not have imagined that she would actually depose her own son. Plus, she was 61. She didn't have much more time herself. Or so he thought. She will live to be 82.
Wow.
The moment Gaozong bit the dust, Wu Zetian bought herself 27 days of exclusive administrative power by going to Li Zhe like, "Son, I know that you must be devastated about your father's death. It is all right. I will carry the burden of state affairs for you during your mourning period," which was 27 days instead of 3 years because of a special system for new emperors. Li Zhe couldn't say no without going against filial piety, so he had to agree. In those 27 days, Wu Zetian made a series of rapid-fire moves to consolidate power. She gave promotions to the chancellors and those of the Imperial Li clan to make them happy with her. She relocated the Imperial army from Chang'an to Luoyang, and she sent troops to a bunch of important places around the empire. Once Li Zhe finally took over on the 28th day, he was eager to build up his own support base. Too eager. He did not have his father's patience. It took Gaozong years and years to clear the court and fill it with his own people.
Yeah, that's the thing though. He's kind of messing with a political mastermind. Like, everything that we've witnessed from Wu, again, she's a genius, and to play against her is like, you know, it's like fighting against like a grand chess master or something. And I think like he's way in over his head with this. Yeah, I don't see like ending up all that well.
People, but Li Zhe wanted to do it right away. He immediately tried to make his father-in-law and one of his empress's distant relatives into chancellors, and also the son of his wet nurse into a rank 5 official. Why such a random assortment of people? Because Wu Zetian had deliberately chosen an empress for him, whose family didn't have many political connections. But when Li Zhe brought up his wish to promote these random men who were kind of sort of close to him, the chief chancellor then, Pei Yan, spoke up against this, saying the imperial father-in-law was unqualified to be a chancellor. Li Zhe was furious and blurted out, "So what if I want to make my father-in-law a chancellor? I could give him the throne in a few days if I wanted to." Then he whirled around and stormed out.
Wow.
Pei Yan knew Li Zhe didn't mean what he said, but he very calmly reported these exact words to Wu Zetian. She also knew Li Zhe didn't mean them either, but she acted as if this was a 100% serious statement and got in.
It's the fact that he made the statement. Like, again, the way people use words to like have hidden meanings. Or it's just like when the media takes something someone says and then flips it around. Him saying anything at all kind of doomed him, huh? Wow.
Contact with 2 generals of the Imperial Army. The next day, the whole court was summoned for an unexpected emergency meeting. When the officials got there, they were surprised to find that neither Pei Yan nor the 2 generals nor Wu Zetian were there. Li Zhe, sitting on the throne, was confused too. Then suddenly, Pei Yan strode through the front doors and opened an edict scroll. He read out, "The Emperor is without capability. By order of the Empress Dowager, the Emperor shall be demoted to the Prince of Luling." The moment he finished reading, the 2 generals stormed in, rushed up the stairs to the throne, and dragged Li Zhe off of it. "What wrong did I do?" Li Zhe cried. Then a chilling female voice spoke up from the back entrance of the throne room. "You want to give the empire to your father-in-law. Is that not severe enough of a crime?" The officials knew they were witnessing a coup, but there was nothing they could do to stop it when the
Wow. Again, dude, he was weighing in over his head with this one. Like, he was messing. Everyone who messes with her either ends up dead or gone. Again, she played the game better than anyone. The drama, dude. Like, honestly, this reads like a giant, like, soap opera. I can just see this all, and apparently there are plenty of portrayals of this, but, you know, like, it makes sense. Like, how could there not be with this amount of, like, tea and drama being spilt?
The Imperial Army was on Wu Zetian's side. And it really wasn't the worst thing in the world in their perspective, because Wu Zetian just placed her 4th and final son Li Dan on the throne. He was still a legitimate heir. Wu Zetian didn't even pretend to give Li Dan power this time, though, using the excuse that he is just too devastated over his father's death to think about governance. Wu Zetian kept him under house arrest. Or palace arrest, I guess. What the officials saw during subsequent council meetings was an empty throne. Who they really answered to was Wu Zetian, sitting behind a bead curtain in the back of the chamber. With this much power in her grasp, Wu Zetian became more daring than ever. She gained 5 generations of her ancestors' prince and princess titles. She promoted her nephews from the Wu clan into high positions like chancellor and the minister of war. She changed the imperial flags from red to...
Yeah, putting your own son as basically your prisoner is wild. Like, again, the family dynamics, dude, must have, like, it's hard to be close with people, I feel like, because, like, you're kind of in it on your own, you know? I remember my mom watching some show, some medieval show, I don't know what she was watching, but I remember when I walked in, she she made a comment about it, like, man, it sucked being a king, like everyone wants you dead or something like that. Or I think obviously she was talking about the show, but it kind of like watching so many royal stuff from all kinds of places in the world. Yeah, like family doesn't mean crap. Like family will oftentimes will be the ones who turn on you and like, sometimes become the biggest headaches. It's like you don't really, it doesn't really inspire much love. It's like these higher up lives. I mean, granted, it's still better than being a peasant for sure, because as we know, peasants suffered a lot. But it's like it's also not that great. I mean, I guess in terms of luxury and like resources it is, but like it comes with its own problems. Like, man, like I can't imagine it inspiring much like love among relatives. So yeah, definitely in some aspects kind of like a sadder life, right? Because you really can't trust anyone when you're on the top, But yeah, now she has like absolute power. You can see she's just like, oh, I can finally do like basically whatever I want without the whole, having to go to like the emperor and having to like do all this. Like basically absolute power that she's amassed through decades. Like this is the culmination of decades of maneuvering, killing, assassination, plotting. Like, she played the long game, bro, and you kind of have to with this kind of stuff, and she, again, I just can't say enough, she's a genius.
Silver with purple patterns. She changed the name of Luoyang to Shendu, literally the divine capital. Lots of people began to become unnerved, like, oh, the Empress Dowager isn't actually thinking about taking the throne for herself, is she? Even Pei Yan, the chief chancellor, warned her against going too far. This created a rift between them. Meanwhile, in the eastern province of Yangzhou, right near the Pacific Ocean, a group of down-on-their-luck scholars gathered in a tavern. Chief among them was Li Jingye, the grandson of Li Ji, that general who had convinced Gaozong it was his business if he wanted to make Wu Zetian empress.
Wow.
But his grandsons, Li Jingye and Li Jingye's little brother, were demoted from their once high positions because they straight up weren't good at their jobs. The others having drinks in the tavern with them were in similar positions. They were all either gifted or rich, so they once held important positions, then got laid off because they sucked or were corrupt. They happened to be gathered in the Yang province because it was the place to vacation.
Of the needs.
And what would a bunch of disgraced officials talk about? Politics, of course. Inevitably, they started ranting about how power-hungry Empress Dowager Wu was. They ranted, and at some point, someone said, you know what? With how furious the world is at the Empress Dowager, we would be heroes if we were the ones to overthrow her. The rest of these drunk scholars were instantly fired up with revolutionary fervor. Right there in the tavern, they organized themselves into the anti-Empress Wu resistance. Don't laugh at how this rebellion started, though. They were smart people. One of them secretly contacted an inspection official in the capital, who was also the nephew of the chief chancellor Pei Yan. The inspector came to the Yang province and arrested the governor on false accusations of corruption. It was the duty of inspection officials to keep an eye on other officials and the quality of job they were doing. Li Jingye then rode to the provincial government residence on a horse and declared that he was the new appointed governor. It's not like they had phones back then, so they could quickly check with the central government, and Li Jingye did come from a prominent family. So the government clerks were like, oh, okay. They did not expect Li Jingye to be risking the punishment of death to be faking this. Once he was at the governor's desk, he ordered all the prisons and armories opened and then told the prisoners to grab a weapon and take over the provincial government. After that, Li Jingye announced to the public that him and his crew were rising up in rebellion in the name of the deposed emperor Li Zhe. He was convincing enough that over 100,000 people joined the rebel army, and many
My goodness. Yeah, definitely it comes across as silly at the beginning, but it is a kind of amazing that he got that many people to join him.
towns near the provincial capital quickly surrendered. One of the rebellion commanders wrote this anti-Wu Zetian manifesto that's considered a classic piece of literature. He listed her crimes, which reportedly included causing Taizong and Gaozong to commit incest, torturing Empress Wang to death, killing her sister and brothers, poisoning Gaozong and her own mother, wanting to be emperor, and more. So it must have been very clear to everyone at this point that she wanted to become emperor herself, despite it being literally unprecedented and against every succession rule in Chinese culture. So how did Wu Zetian react to this manifesto? She read it out loud in court, praised the quality of the writing, and was like, who wrote this? We should have used him better. Because the thing is, if you read the whole manifesto, all of the accusation against her are about supposed personal moral failure.
Yeah, that I remember that from when I was watching the Extra History Wu series, he literally opens with that in the first episode, that she actually complimented the writer and that they should have used him. That's hilarious. But kind of goes to show how unbothered she is by the whole situation, right? You think this would be like a crisis, but she has an oddly, like, kind of like a, you know, chill demeanor about the whole thing.
Nothing against her actual governing skills, because she was a good leader. In the more than 1,000 years after she lived, even the most sexist historians could not deny that she was a capable administrator with a keen eye for talent. And in that council meeting, her steely composure and unshakable confidence steadied most officials who may have had thoughts of joining the rebellion. However, when Wu Zetian then asked for thoughts on what to do about the rebellion, Pei Yan spoke up, saying that the rebellion started because the people could see that the emperor was not in control. If Wu Zetian would just give up control and retreat to the inner palace, then the rebellion would naturally—
He's playing a dangerous game with this woman. Like, the amount of people that have gone missing and that, you think they would all realize this and like be like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't mess with that. But nope, there's still people trying to challenge her at this point when she is even more powerful than ever. Like, look at what she accomplished before she achieved this level, and how much she managed to get rid of people before she basically became the ruler of China. Now let me provoke her at her most powerful and unrestrained. Like, you get me? I feel like surely all these guys around her must have seen this or realized it, and I don't know.
disintegrate. After the words came out of him, silence descended through the throne room. Wu Zetian glared across the assembly of officials. Suddenly, a lowly rank 8 official shouted, Pei Yan must be in cahoots with the rebellion. That's why he would say such a thing. Wu Zetian was like, yes, definitely, arrest him for treason. And so Pei Yan was dragged away. He had many friends in the court who pleaded on his behalf, but it only alerted Wu Zetian to who she needed to deal with after the rebellion.
Oh boy.
She gathered an army of 300,000 troops and deliberately sent a member of the Li clan to be its commander, so the rebellion would lose the legitimacy of its claim that it was rising up to restore power to the Lis. This commander wasn't good at warfare, but she—
Yeah, but like she picked him on name merit, which basically makes the entire rebellion look like a sham. Again, just the political even at this point, still just outplaying everybody.
Paired him with a great strategist. When the Imperial army suffered an initial defeat, the strategist told the commander to go after a smaller branch legion of the enemy first, because the key weakness of the rebel army was that they were composed of just random people who randomly got together, so their morale was easily broken. It only took 44 days for the rebellion to be quelled, counting the time it took for both armies to march across China.
Wow.
And China is big. After that, Wu Zetian executed all of Pei Yan's allies and gave the court a stern warning. She said, if any of you think you are more brilliant, more noble, or a better commander than those I have taken down, I implore you to defy me now, or else serve me with all your loyalty. Do not make yourself into the laughingstock of the world. The entire court of officials fell to their knees and kowtowed to her. We are yours to command, they said.
Yeah, at this point, you're just gonna have to, bro. Like, it's true. Look at all the people she has gotten rid of. All the challenges she has overcome. Basically unstoppable. Like, do you really want to be like all these people who have gone missing? Like, you know what I mean? It's just... At this point, it would just be smart to just not oppose her, right?
She was so close to breaking that imperial ceiling, but there was still the imperial clan to worry about. Because of how Chinese culture views clans and dynasties, Wu Zetian would always be considered part of the Wu clan, and therefore could not take the throne as part of the Tang dynasty. She would have to overthrow and establish a new dynasty under the Wu clan if she wanted to be emperor. The Li clan would obviously not be happy about this, so how does she take care of them? In the year 688, 65-year-old Wu Zetian's nephew planted a stone in the Luo River near Luoyang that had the words, "The Divine Mother has graced the mortal realm, may she reign forever." When the stone was found and presented to Wu Zetian, she was delighted, declaring it to be an auspicious treasure and titling herself the Divine Mother Holy Emperor.
My goodness. How convenient.
Even though the actual Emperor Li Dan was still alive. She told every major branch of the Li clan to gather in Luoyang by the 12th month, when she would make sacrifices to the goddess of the Luo River. Terrified that this was her excuse to round them up and massacre them, the branches of the Li clan started planning a rebellion in secret. One wrote to another, "The wife is getting sick. We must seek treatment soon before the winter comes." A letter was spread around, declaring that Wu Zetian plans to overthrow the Li clan, so they must rise now. However, before they had the time to fully plan out the rebellion, a young member of the clan snitched on the whole operation.
Ooh.
He just had too many nightmares that they would lose and have to face Wu Zetian's wrath. Two princes rose up anyway with the few thousand people they had, but were defeated in 7 days and 17 days respectively. Over 70 members of the Li clan were executed as a result of the investigation into the planned rebellion, basically every lineage except Wu Zetian's own children. The snitch was promoted, but got killed a few months later when he got implicated into another case. All his snitching bought him was a few extra months of life. Remember,
Dang. Snitches get stitches, son. But it's true. But again, they may have even failed even without that. At this point, with the track record of failure that everyone has had against Wu, yeah, that guy, yeah, I don't know. They probably would have failed anyway. So again, literally unstoppable.
her kids, snitches end in ditches.
If you guarantee.
In the 12th month, Wu Zetian made sacrifices to the Luo River goddess right on schedule. During the ceremony, she wore the imperial bead crown for the first time, a crown that only emperors are supposed to be allowed to wear, but no one could tell her no anymore. In the same month, her lover, oh yeah, she had lovers now, she was 65 and still going strong.
Dang.
This particular lover, Xue Huaiyi, was once a street merchant, but hung around the palace disguised as a monk after he was recommended to her. He supervised the construction of the Luminous Hall, a massive tower meant to be a replica of a legendary structure meant for emperors, as described in the Confucian classics. And when I say it was massive, I mean it was reportedly 91 meters tall. That's 300 foot, equivalent to a 27-story building. Though it only had 3 very, very high levels inside. The bottom level was designed after the 4 seasons, the central level was designed after the Chinese zodiac, and the top level was designed after the 24 solar terms of the Chinese agricultural calendar. 9 gilded dragons supported its roof, which had a gilded metal phoenix at the very top. The message was very clear. We female supremacy now.
We support women now, period. But, dang, that sounds amazing, though. That sounds incredibly cool. Yeah. I mean, there were times where I love the drop of subtlety. She doesn't have to be subtle anymore. Like, kind of before. She's like, yeah, I'm in control. What are you gonna do about it? Like, and no one can do anything about it. It's, yeah, how baller.
Though the Luminous Hall was inspired by something out of Confucian classics, Wu Zetian did realize that Confucian values would never give her the justification to take the throne for herself. So she told Xue Huaiyi to look for justification in Buddhist texts, which were less sexist. After flipping through a great many of these texts, Xue Huaiyi discovered something promising in the Great Cloud classic. This text spoke of how the Buddha told a heavenly spirit she would reincarnate as a woman on earth to rule a kingdom before ascending to Buddhahood. What's more, this heavenly spirit was the wife of a king in her previous life. This was perfect for Wu Zetian, so she ordered the Great Cloud Classic to be translated into a more colloquial language, and also for every provincial capital to construct a Great Cloud Monastery dedicated to the teaching of this text. However, she made a change during the translation. She worried that the heavenly spirit in the original story was too obscure, so she changed the prophecy to be about the much more well-known Maitreya Buddha instead. It's not like most people were literate enough to double-check the original. Finally, Wu Zetian had created a religious basis for her rule. The Buddha himself had sent her to rule China. After all of the—
Wow. Again, that's amazing. Like I mentioned last video, I think, with Augustus Caesar kind of like styling himself the son of a god, and then the whole Roman legitimacy with the Aeneid as to show Caesar very legitimate through all the way through being descended from Venus, aka Aphrodite. It's cool to see something like that similar all the way here. Like, yeah, she just keeps finding ways around things, bro.
this prep work, in the year 690, a clever rank 7 official gathered a bunch of capital citizens in front of the palace and petitioned for 67-year-old Wu Zetian to take the throne. She was like, oh no, not me, but promoted him to rank 5. This is a dance that all usurpers in ancient China did. You have to reject people's humble requests for you to become emperor at least 3 times before being like, oh, okay, if all of you insist I be emperor. After this first petition, 10,000 people attended the second round of petitions. Then,
okay, that reminds me of Augustus. And I keep mentioning Augustus because I feel like Augustus and Wu can really be compared. Because, the first emperor of the Romans and the first female emperor of China, like they have a lot of similarities, and I think Augustus is the same thing. He had when he already achieved great power and basically had all his goons in the Senate, and the Senate was basically relying on him. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to step down now and just be a normal Roman citizen, and they were all like, no, please don't. And he was like, all right, I guess. The feigned humility that the show you have to put on, even though you know you're going to. I don't know. I always find that funny, just the drama of it.
60,000 people attended the third round, including officials, surviving members of the Li clan, commoners, tribal leaders, and religious leaders. They gathered in front of the palace and declared that they refused to leave until Wu Zetian accepted the mandate of heaven. They were even angry at her, like, the heavens have commanded you to become ruler of the realm, and we all see you as our mother. How could you care only about looking humble and not about the will of the heavens and the people?
Wow.
Wu Zetian was still like, eh. But just then, a big bird flew overhead. It's a phoenix, someone shouted. Then a giant flock of other birds flew after it, and the crowd erupted into cheers. The Emperor Li Dan himself stepped up to his mother and basically begged to pass his throne to her and be bestowed the Wu family name. Finally, at age 67, 53 years after she first stepped into the palace, 35 years after she became empress, 7 years after she became empress dowager, Wu Zetian became the first and only female emperor in Chinese history.
Holy crap. I feel like I have to clap because, man, what the perfect long game, bro. She went through all of that, all these constant leveling ups to finally achieve this goal. Again, probably one of the best political minds I've ever seen. It is beyond impressive.
Founded the Zhou dynasty and will go on to rule as sole legitimate sovereign of China for 15 more years. The Zetian we now refer to her as comes from one of her final titles, the Zetian Dashen Emperor, loosely meaning the great sage who rules by the will of heaven. We may not know her birth name, but she created a brand new character to use as her name, combining the characters for the sun, moon, and sky. It's read as Zhao.
I started only.
Yeah, kind of like Octavian becoming Augustus. I'm sorry, I mean this in the most flattering way. Augustus is my favorite Roman emperor. So, Yeah, like I see a lot of sort of things I could link between the two.
No relation to the Zhao of my family name, by the way, though I am supposedly descended from the Li clan of the Tang Dynasty from my mom's side, and since pretty much only Gaozong and Wu Zetian's lineages of the clan survived, that means I'm very likely a very distant descendant of Wu Zetian. Which is not as impressive as it sounds when you're Chinese. Honestly, like so many of us can trace our lineages back to some imperial family. They had lots of children, okay? Anyway, her 15-year reign as emperor is filled with just as much drama and intrigue as the story so far, with secret police, male lovers, the Chinese equivalent of Sherlock Holmes, and a bunch of women seeing her example and rising up with political ambition. And I'll probably do a video on this era someday, but at the end of her life, Wu Zetian faced the painful choice of whether to pass the throne to her son, who was part of the Li clan, or to her nephew, who was part of the Wu clan. Dynastic rules mandated that she must pass the throne to someone in the same clan for her dynasty to go on, but she wouldn't have a place in her nephew's ancestral temple. There was no such thing as a nephew paying respects to an aunt. Only by passing the throne to her son could her spirit have an imperial home, though it meant that the Tang dynasty would be restored and the Zhou dynasty would end with her. Her dilemma was
The dynasty, I remember extra history saying it did end with her, didn't it? Like her dynasty, like it didn't outlive her. I could be wrong about that, but I could see why that would be a big dilemma, right? Worrying about, I guess, what happens after.
ultimately caused by the position of women in Chinese culture as bridges between families. She would always be stuck between the Li clan and the Wu clan, because clans were structured with men as the focus, and women were the links between clans. So ultimately, she chose to give the throne back to her son. Seeing her suffer this dilemma was probably also why no other woman after her successfully became emperor. What was the point of founding a dynasty if you knew you'd have to give it up in the end?
Wow.
On her deathbed, Wu Zetian renounced her emperor title and declared that she wanted to be buried with Gaozong as his empress. It was actually a critical move that ensured she would always be considered an ancestor of all subsequent Tang Dynasty emperors, and therefore they could not talk shit about her or try to erase her legacy.
Dang.
Confucian culture may have restrained her all her life, but she used Confucian culture to restrain her descendants in her death.
Dude, even in death, she's like outmaneuvers everybody. That's amazing. Again, I just have to I'm clapping, well played, well played.
A stele was erected in her mausoleum and was supposed to be inscribed with an epitaph by her son, but he could not find the words to sum up his mother's life. It remained the famous wordless stele. Well, it's not so wordless anymore after centuries of scholars vandalizing it with their unsolicited commentary on her. Interestingly though, Wu Zetian and Gaozong's shared mausoleum is the only imperial tomb from the Tang Dynasty to not have been robbed, even though people have certainly tried. What kind of treasures are in there? Maybe we'll find out one day. Maybe we won't. I gotta say something though. As inspiring as Wu Zetian's story is, it's also a cautionary tale. She ruled at the height of female liberation in Imperial China, yet after her, women's rights steadily declined. Foot-binding came after her. This is proof that history isn't destined to move in a progressive direction. Oppressors will always try to oppress, and if we drop our guard for even 1 second, we could lose the rights our ancestors fought so hard for.
And I think that's probably what I've taken most from these videos, and I'm really happy to have looked and gotten a better look. I mean, what most resonated with me right here in this video is the end. What's the point of becoming emperor if you have to give it up? Always, even at the end, restrained by her gender, right? It's true, like, all that work, all that maneuvering, all that murder, everything she did. And yes, she achieved a great position that, here in the future, us, history, buffs or historians, can look at and admire. But at the end, like in her own lifetime, her dynasty was gonna just go back to being what her husband's was, right? And essentially give it up. Like, that I would imagine that would have to, like, weigh on you mentally, like, oh, that's it, like, it's not gonna, like, her dynasty ain't gonna last, it's gonna go back to the way it was before, and never be replicated. I mean, I guess you have the satisfaction of knowing you did what no one else did, but like I like that kind of ending. I don't know. I imagine that would like it would bug me a little. Like, oh, what was a bit of me would be like, what was it all for? But I don't know. At least like in history, definitely preserved like forever. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Overall, I'm really happy to look at that because, like I said, like I watch a lot of history. I'm a history YouTuber reactor. I react to history videos and only history videos. So I do, and a lot of history. It's again, it's always men. Men are in charge. Men are leading armies. It's always men, and women aren't as prevalent. So like it's all. I do take note whenever I do see a woman historical figure that is that important and that vital. And it's like, wow, like that's really cool. Like that's interesting to see. And I definitely have come a long way from my original viewing of Wu as just a woman who murdered her baby and that's it. Like, into like a much more like, wow, I kind of like really respect what you accomplish and how far you went. So this is definitely a historical figure that I feel like I've gone through quite a journey with in terms of my perception changing a lot. So this was a great video. I'm glad it was recommended to me, and I'm glad I really looked at it, and this was very enjoyable.